one pair of trunks.
Shut up.
Hey, look, if I'm not going to get admitted to nursing school, I got to fucking find something else to do.
You got to find somewhere else to get admitted to, right?
Comedy's it.
Dad jokes.
Don't quit your day job.
Oh, no.
Oh, great.
Or your second job, for that matter.
Laugh guys here.
The laugh track is here now.
What is this?
It's okay, as
Hey,
long as he's not flirting
Brandon,
with my
did you
mom,
pass
so-
that
Greg,
bottle down? Pass it down.
Father Jeff was told not to brew by the Catholic Church, and he has to stop brewing.
Since what?
It's in the fucking Star
Oh,
Telegram. dude.
no
Really?
shit.
Whoa.
Jared just sent us the article.
Is that what the...
I was wondering. I mean, he's not a Methodist, so, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, what the hell about the
Catholics
monks
are,
and stuff?
Well, that's
He wouldn't
you know,
talk about
different.
it much.
It's kind
It
of old
says
school kind of stuff there.
Father Jeff said it was a pretty short conversation. He holds all the cards in that relationship. And
Oh,
then
the
the
Cardinals.
bishop wouldn't say anything about it. He said it's a matter between a bishop and his priest.
Maybe he holds all the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That's not the worst.
Let's
Catholic
bad joke tonight.
joke.
Bad,
Oh,
bad
he
joke.
said he has to stop brewing. He's going to stop brewing. He's going to make yogurt.
Ooh.
Well, we were told... He told us...
crap.
He told us that he had been told that he couldn't brew anymore, but he was going to be...
Advising others on the
Well,
proper methods.
He was going to be brewing with his friends up there.
He's taking on an
You won't be
advisory role in
competing
the
anymore.
region.
I thought the molesting kids
Less than a
was
minute.
bad, but this?
Wow. I wasn't going to go there.
Hey,
What? It's the thing that happened. I didn't make it up.
no. Hey. I say pass that down so that Monkey Boy and Board Boy can have some.
Monkey Boy and Board Boy.
I think I'm Monkey Boy. I'm not sure, though.
Yeah. I do have
I think I'd rather be Monkey Boy than Board Boy.
another bottle.
We'll have to send that article to the AHA.
What does a Board Boy do, actually?
Here you go, guys. Zymers, you
The board?
follow up.
Stack wood.
Not Boards
seconds.
Boy.
Live audio.
Syphilis.
The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
Okay.
You reek, you dork. You reek, you dork. What?
What?
I like it.
Welcome back to Come and Brew It Radio, coming to you from Texas Brewing Inc. in Haltom City, Texas. You can find us on the web at txbrewing.com and be sure to follow us on Facebook and share with all your friends.
In this episode, we'll hit up some more discussions of basics with our first Yeast-o-Rama segment, where we'll discuss the characteristics of several different yeasts. Tonight's yeast will include American, English, Belgian, and German strains. Then we'll continue our Belgian style coverage with BJCP Category 24A Belgian Witbier. Blue Moon wants to claim to be one, but if you want to try the real deal, look into our Whitetail Wit kit or pick up a 6-pack of Celis. You'll get the refreshing character you're supposed to get.
Oh, before we get started, please be sure to check out our Patreon account to help support the show. Every little bit counts, and if you visit patreon.com/Come and Brew It Radio, we have a variety of options for you to help keep the show going. Get involved and improve it. Plus, we'd like to thank James Castellano for becoming a patron.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.
I'm
Right
Mikey
on.
B.
I'm Pete.
I'm Greg.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Chris.
Stubby's running the board, so
I'm Stubby, yeah.
there he is.
Yeah, he's,
And I just dropped my phone right on the freaking ground, dude. So,
Oh, that's
you know,
what that was.
Yeah.
Well, you
That
know,
was-
while I was rehearsing the opening there, all these guys were trying to screw me up and everything, and I got through it just fine. That is what threw me off, is your phone falling on the ground. I can't believe it.
yeah,
I can
always
totally
something.
believe it.
I feel like such an amateur.
Well,
We're all amateurs.
Well,
You know?
Less than 100
mean-
episodes? Yeah, it kind of does it for
Stubby
you.
gave me $1
We
once.
all
Doesn't
are.
that mean I'm
Oh, then you're
professional?
pro.
Yeah, right.
You know, he still has to give me $20 for my pizzas.
Oh,
I want my $2.
Oh,
On the air, even. Wow.
throw me under the bus.
oh,
Look
I'm
at
sorry.
He had that one all teed up too.
I know,
huh?
man.
Just
It's
waiting,
like- it's like-
waiting for an
I didn't.
opportunity.
and that's the thing, man. It's like, holy crap, dude. You know, the whole pizza thing.
It's only fun on the air because,
Always
you know.
circling.
It was
whatever.
only a slice. God's sakes.
All right. So anyway, what are we talking about tonight? Because
Beer.
I know I went and bought Witbiers, so
Witbier is going to be the second half of the show. I'm
Oh,
looking forward to
okay.
that. That's a style that's pretty near and dear to me. Kind of my signature beer that I brew that I've really actually won some awards for and stuff is a Witbier. So I like that style a
what?
lot.
You entered a competition?
What kind
It
of
was,
awards?
it was
Won?
long ago. It
what,
was long ago.
What kind of
yes.
awards have you won?
Major awards. Major. Like a lamp shaped like a leg. That's one of the things that I won.
That's good enough.
Right. So, but before that, we're going to get into some discussions on different yeast strains. And, you know, we've done what we're calling Yeast-o-Rama for a while, where we're going kind of hop variety by hop variety and talk about some of those traits. We're going to do that with yeast, too. I think that yeast selection is something that's a lot of times kind of overlooked by home brewers, or inexperienced home brewers, I should say. That it's something tough to wrap your mind around. A lot of times you're getting a recipe and you're just kind of using whatever they say there is to use in the recipe. And I think it's something that it really, really is important to think it out as well as you can and really make the most informed decision you can. So we're going to talk about some of the more common yeasts.
Don't get distracted.
Look at you guys.
Don't get distracted.
You guys know we're doing a show right now, right? I mean,
Hey,
Hold it
you're
still,
the only
Mikey.
professional here, okay?
unbelievable.
Good God,
I
Mikey,
can't work
you-
in these conditions.
Oh my goodness! All right, so
That's awesome.
First a taco beer and now this. Oh, that's a great shot.
You're not supposed to talk about
Suck my gut
No, we're not taco abouting it.
in. We're not talking about that. Okay.
But let's talk about other things.
Yes. So we have recent news here on the schedule and a big question mark. And literally 30 seconds before we started up here, we got something across the desk that's I think worth mentioning. We
yeah.
talked about Father Jeff Poirot, right? Is that how you say it?
Perrot.
Perrot. Okay. Who won the Ninkasi at
Perrot.
at NHC this year? Perot or Perrot?
It's Perrot.
Parati.
Perrot. Okay.
Parati.
So anyway,
P-O-I-R-O-T, I believe.
Oh, that's pirate.
I usually spell it wrong, so
It's pirate.
I know we really need to
Definitely
put father in the.
Father Jeff Pirate, one of our local homebrewers here. He's gotten a lot of people into homebrewing in this area. He's a member of a couple different local clubs, and he won Ninkasi this year, which is basically what I explained to my wife. It's the Nobel Peace Prize of homebrewing.
Homebrewer of the
Shut
year
up.
like,
was just
period.
instructed by the Catholic Church that he can no longer brew.
Well, he was instructed by
The diocese.
the bishop that apparently doesn't like that.
Right.
So
That's
I think
like
if he
saying the
moved to a
mayor
different,
doesn't like you.
yeah, I mean, if I would hope that if he somehow landed
Which
in
one
another
is the
diocese,
bishop? Is that the castle or the one on the horse?
it's the one on the horse.
Pointy one.
Yeah.
No, it's the pointy one.
Okay.
No,
I'm
no,
just
that-
trying to-
no, it's
I'm
the
just
pointy
trying
one.
to
Yeah,
keep it
never
all
mind.
straight
yeah.
here.
So the pointy
So-
guy told him stop brewing, but I think if
Okay.
he went to another chess table,
Maybe the
you
rook
know,
or something?
maybe the rook. I don't
Okay.
know. Maybe
I
a
think he
pawn.
got rooked. He can't brew no more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the article was
Yeah,
in
check that,
the local
right?
newspaper, the Star Telegram, which is a Fort Worth newspaper, and I personally think it's a bunch of bullshit, and I hate it, and I'm mad.
Well,
Yeah,
you know,
and that's one of the,
Right?
I know Jeff personally, and man, I tell you what, he's a good guy, and I tell him all the time. I said, man, you know, if more people were like you in the Christian community and serve beer to their parish and stuff, you probably have a lot more people going to church. I'm
well, you
just
know,
saying.
James Lalonde does that. James Lalonde brews a lot of beer that he
Just for the
serves
church,
at
yeah.
church
Yeah.
groups. Yeah.
Yeah. He's Methodist or something, right?
I don't
something.
know.
But anyway,
Does it
he's
matter?
one that allows drinking. So
Does it
you know,
doesn't
most of
really
them.
matter though? I mean, which denomination does not drink beer?
Mormon.
Mormons.
well, back
You know,
Wow.
one half of
You
my
guys
family.
were really fast on that.
Where they love green jello.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
my
Green
Mormon
Jello
father-in-law
recipes,
that was
yeah.
on my Iron Mash team.
Uh-huh,
He doesn't-
that's
he
correct.
doesn't drink beer.
But anyway, so if you have the inkling, and you know Jeff personally, probably wouldn't hurt to reach out and send some emails. I mean, be nice about it though. I mean, but just say, hey, you know, this guy is really a fixture in the community because what he does. You know, I think, and I can't think of a better outreach than that. You know,
Yeah.
so. I mean, what interests people? You know, if they're into this particular hobby, I think it's a great way to reach people. So, well, be that as it may, you know, if you know Father Jeff and I don't
You have
even know who
any
to
pull
email,
with
but
the Catholic Church?
so,
I don't know. I thought
So
whenever they
if
found
the Pope is listening,
Pope, yeah, are you listening
we'd
tonight?
really like to have Jeff.
We know
continue
you're a
brewing.
fan.
I think he listens. He's a download listener. I
Ah.
don't think he's a live
Ah.
listener.
he's not commenting
He's
on
not Facebook Live in it.
I don't know. I kind of thought whenever they found a priest doing something they didn't like, they just move him to another parish. Isn't that how it? So maybe
Can we
he'll-
not
maybe
do
he'll
that
move
with
back.
Father Jeff?
Yeah.
For heaven's sakes, literally, for heaven's sakes, can
I'm
we
sorry.
not do that?
I can't comment any further without getting extraordinarily offensive. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Shut
like
up.
it's almost like politics and religion. You know?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Right?
Those are not available here. Anyway,
You know, one of the other things I wanted to bring up too, and I thought about this, and I thought we should have brought it up earlier. We spend a lot of time on here, especially in this part of the show where we talk about recent news and buyouts and that kind of thing, bashing big beer, and I think it's warranted that we do. You know, especially AB InBev and them. But I also believe in giving credit where credit is due, and just like they always do, recently with the two hurricanes that hit Harvey and Irma. When that happens, these big breweries that are owned by these guys, they can a ton of water.
It just shuts down.
Yeah,
b-
they
beer
shut
production,
down
and it's
brewing and they
just-
can water and they give it out, and they do it every time there's a
Yeah.
national disaster.
That's because they can.
Well, you know, I also see a lot of you see a lot of the breweries,
Damn
the
jokes.
regional, the local breweries that are canning, they do it as well. So Martin House typically will can a bunch of stuff. You see it on Facebook with the smaller guys, but you know,
well, I mean, come on, dude.
Hats
Well,
off to those
they're
guys
not-
for
it's
doing
not
it.
like they're not doing. I mean, it's not like they're really changing the recipe much. You know, they just pull a little
here's the
barley
thing.
out.
You'll never see it in an advertisement. They're not.
Oh, man.
I mean, they don't advertise that they do this. It's just something they do. They keep cans at the breweries that just say water on them, just for when this kind of thing happens. Personally, I think it's a pretty admirable thing to do. So I just
I
wanted
do
to point it
too.
out that
The little guys do
we,
it
we
as
well.
bash
Sure.
them. So I think it's only fair to give them credit.
give them credit where
when-
credit's due.
when they
Absolutely.
do
There are a
something
few
like that,
Houston
so.
breweries that the small guys that were doing it too. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
So for the longest time, I thought it was only AB that did it because those are the only ones I've ever seen.
Well,
you don't get out much, do you?
No, only
Okay.
only around Houston.
I'm sure that they were the ones to do it long before everybody else because it's really a fairly recent thing that smaller breweries even
Well,
have
and they can
cans
shit
at
out.
all.
Oh shit! I said they can shoot out about 10,000 and
Shit out all
an
that
hour, you know,
water.
so-
Shit,
Shit it
shooting
out.
shit.
She sells, she short.
Been drinking too many taco beers.
Yeah. What's the taco about that?
How can I taco about it?
We're stupid.
secret's
This
out.
is stupid. This whole thing. Let's start over. Erase the tape.
Canceled.
That's not your business.
Nacho cheese.
Well, you know, while we're discussing all these yeasts in this first half, I've got my little stash of beer that I brought back from Kansas City.
Bragger.
So we're going to be enjoying some good Midwest beers.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
we
So
already
far,
started,
what we've
yeah.
had, I really like that Nebraska Pils. I thought was
That was-
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Firmly bitter.
Yeah.
I was not initially a big fan of it.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. It's on
Keep
camera.
going.
I thought it was pretty good, but kind of average. The more I drink, the better
you
it
feel.
tends to get. I ended up with 2 6-packs of that for some reason because I was just, oh my god, I haven't seen that, and I haven't
Well,
seen that, and I haven't seen that. So
What I really like about some of these craft breweries that are doing pills now, they're for one thing, they're doing a much better job of it than I think they were doing years ago. A lot of these breweries have the time to make sure that it's done right. It's an opportunity to get a really well made pilsner fresh, because the hop character is so important to that style that getting it fresh is really, really important. And that bright kind of spicy and floral hop flavor that comes from some of those noble hops is just you can't replace that. And I think it's really nice to be able to get some fresh examples now. There's a lot of good craft breweries putting out very respectable pilsners. So I
always like to get it fresh.
got to get it fresh.
Fresh is good.
That fresh is good. And then that KC beer company,
Hellas?
KC beer company, Hellas, was also very good.
Yeah, that was
This is rock
Munich
solid.
style golden lager.
Rock solid beer, and I got some more of this to hand out.
It's not Munich.
It says it right on the bottle.
That's what it says.
Oh, hell, it
This
does.
stuff's pretty solid beer. I'm kind of sad I didn't get more of this.
And I'm more into these styles of beer lately that are refreshing and easy drinking and a little bit lower alcohol and maybe not kind of punch you in the mouth with flavor. I'm liking these Pilsners and Hellas's and that kind of thing a lot more lately. So,
Well, I like seeing a local craft brewery that's not putting out 19 different IPAs.
yes, I agree.
Like
put out
who?
Yeah, every time I go to the grocery store, if there's 100 beers, 90 of them are pale ales or IPAs.
It's it's really getting to be
It's
so
it's
heavily
just-
weighted to
it's
that.
just overload.
And half of them are going to be AB and Bev breweries. It's really gotten to be tough. Not if you go to a good craft beer selection at somewhere, but at your local Kroger or whatever higher end grocery store that has a little bit better selection.
Going to a better store.
Right. But,
More gooder, yeah.
Yeah, more gooder. You see, because you'll see a 6-pack of, and I do like the New Belgium stuff, but there's 3 different IPAs from New Belgium, and then they also have their 12-packs as well. And so that's taking up a space that another
Yeah, get 'em
6-pack
out of
could
there.
be.
And I love
Get 'em out of
IPAs. I
there.
drink IPAs all the
I
time,
do.
but sometimes you just get a little bit of palate fatigue, and you just
I
want
have
something
2
more
in
easy
here
drinking.
for us.
We'll
So
bust them out, Mikey.
That's
we're working our way.
It's one of
towards
the things I like about some of the local
Working
breweries
my
around here.
way
There is some
back to
good
IPA.
Jesus.
I don't know,
babe.
babe. No, you're not.
I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Have some beer here. That'll wash it
Tastes
out.
like
I don't-
taco.
No.
Let's talk about it.
All right. So let's get into this Yeast-o-Rama thing here. Again, like I was saying at the beginning, I think that this is something really important for beginning brewers to take into account a little bit more than just whatever the recipe they're looking at says to use, and to use some of these yeasts several times and get a feel for how they ferment and what kind of flavors they put off, and to pay attention to things like flocculation and attenuation and that kind of thing to know where their beer is going to finish.
Well, let's remind people what does attenuation mean and what does flocculation
Right.
mean.
So attenuation is basically the measure of how much of the sugar that's in there it's going to be able to, how far down it's going to be able to ferment the beer. Some of the English yeasts have a little bit lower attenuation, partially because they're more flocculent. We'll get into that in a second. But if you want a beer to really dry out, if you're looking at a pale ale or something like that you really want to dry out, you got to make sure you use a yeast that's going to ferment as much as possible. So it's important to get familiar with that particular characteristic. And then flocculation helps a lot too, especially for some of these guys. Like I was listening to the episode we were talking about fining, and some people on Facebook were saying they just don't have the ability to cold crash. So for people like that, it's important to use a flocculent yeast. And like this first one we're going to get into here too, the American Ale 2, the Y Yeast 1272. That's a good example of something like that. That's a pretty flocculent yeast. It drops out a lot better than your average Cal Ale yeast, like WLP 001 or 1056 or US 05, which are very
much
powdery
better.
yeast. Those are tough to get out of suspension sometimes. If you don't have the ability to cold crash, it helps if you use a more flocculent yeast that will drop out on its own, and you'll have a clearer beer. You may not still be able to get
Sooner.
the crystal clear, but sooner.
A lot sooner.
A lot
True,
sooner.
true.
Yeah. So let's get into that with the American Ale 2. This is a really pretty unique yeast, I think.
Yeah, trying to find a substitute for this one was pretty difficult when you look at what other brands have out there and whatnot. And definitely there are no substitutes really in the dry. There may be some
I
things
think
you
the
might work
closest
with,
thing
but
maybe is the
they're not
BRY.
accurate.
BRY
They're still not
maybe
accurate though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the flavor profile between those that really throws it.
the Bry 97 in that.
And
Yeah.
for your classic commercial example, the 1272 is a signature yeast for Anchor Liberty.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's their yeast,
Which
for
is
this.
widely considered the first West
Which
Coast
just got
IPA.
bought out, right?
Yeah,
Bastards.
but it's all right. They were bought by the Japanese.
They're Sapporo.
And
Oh,
pretty,
so that's okay.
We're okay with that.
They just
Well-
bombed us in Pearl Harbor.
They
but
were
that's okay now.
they were
Well,
initially bought out by
by the time this
Oh,
comes
wow.
out, by the
Wow.
time this comes out, North Korea will have wiped them off the face of the
So
map, and it'll
early.
be
back to us.
It'll be an
yeah.
American brewery again. Yeah.
I mean,
So-
they were already bought out by some
Yeah.
investment group. So
Okay, great. We've hit politics and religion in
Yeah,
one
well,
episode.
you know.
It's important to cover all the bases.
That's what we
Absolutely.
do.
This is a key yeast, though, in our the Rabbit Hole Rapture Brown. I think it really sets that beer
Yeah.
off. Whenever you do that kit, this is
It-
if
for
you
the
can
liquid
use
yeast.
this
Yeah,
yeast.
yeah.
Use this yeast. I mean, it really needs to be this yeast, I think, to get the right thing out of it. So
So for me to boil this one down is, I think
shouldn't
that
boil the yeast
the
down.
key component of this is that it's an American ale yeast, but it puts off some esters. It's got esters almost
Right.
similar to what you'd find in an English yeast,
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of character of an English yeast.
yeah,
to this
it
one.
kind of does.
It's just cleaner. I think.
It's just a little cleaner, right. And I think this one works really well with IPAs and pale ales. I think the
Right.
esters that it puts off blend in very well with hop flavor.
right.
That's been my experience in the past. Is when I've liked this yeast the best is with hoppier beers.
And this is one of the White Labs version that they suggested as a possible substitute with the California 5.
and that's on the Mr. Malsey page as comparable.
You'll see that
yeast.
one out there, and it's. I think you'll find that that 5 is used in a lot of pale ales and IPAs too. You know,
Personally, my experience, I think Nottingham would be the closest substitute to it. Although Nottingham's a little
in a
cleaner.
dry.
Yeah, it's not.
See-
it's not quite as estery.
I
You're
mean-
not getting that like where it says the hints of nut and slightly tart things like that. I don't think you're getting any of that out of those yeast. You know.
No,
you're
definitely
not.
not out of the Nottingham. Yeah, the Mr. Malty, which we reference a lot, MrMalty.com, it's listing the California 5 as the Anchor Liberty yeast as well. How accurate that is,
Well,
we'll see.
I'd be willing to bet that a lot of these are the exact same strain of
Right.
yeast, and it's just tough to say for sure because neither one of them is ever going to say, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you
Well,
can
you
buy
should-
theirs
Exactly.
and it'll be
You
the
also
same
have to
one."
put it
yeah.
this way. It's like I didn't start this off with like, oh, American Ale, 1056 and 001 and whatnot. They are supposed to be the same, but every time that has been taken somewhere else and bred slightly and produced slightly differently over time, they've changed. That's why I think 001's different from 1056, even though, and that's definitely different from US05 to me, when you count all those in. And you could say that about these two. They're in the same general range, but
It's the
they're
same-
not going to
it's-
be exactly the same as the next one, That's why it's like when
Well,
we get
it's, you know,
substitutes, it's hard
it's-
to choose.
It's the same thing, but made by two different manufacturers. So,
But
there's-
even
there's-
still,
there
there's
is a difference.
variation
Right.
in the strain just biologically.
Yeah,
There are
no,
things that
that's-
are gonna be
I-
different, so.
Yeah, just based on where it was.
Keep that in mind when
where it was
we're
propagated.
talking about these. That
Mhm.
when we say a substitute, it's still not going to be the same thing as the one we're talking about.
That's a good point. Yeah, and sometimes it can come down to they need to be treated differently to get a similar result out of them
Right.
too. And that's one of the things I was saying about get familiar with the characteristics. Find something that hits a few of the notes that you want to hit in terms of attenuation and flocculation and ester profile and that kind of thing, and then use that one several times and kind of get used to it. Get used to the little subtleties of how it ferments, how much oxygen it needs, what kind of starter you have to make. Will it do well in the real low temperature ranges if you're trying to get it to keep it real clean, all that kind of stuff. And personally, I go back to the flocculation again. I think flocculation is a really, really important characteristic of yeast that gets overlooked.
You know
a lot
what's
of
funny
times.
is, all this time I just thought that was something that me and my wife like to do.
As bad as mine.
No,
Well,
it was not as bad as yours, but pretty close.
Brandon, you touched on something.
Clump
it's-
together and drop out.
It's important. It's important to remember for your
I roll over and go to sleep. I ain't lying.
That's true. Your yeast cell count. I mean, the easy way to remember that is you're going to want 4 billion yeast cells per gravity point in specific gravity. So figure out what that is, and then remember that the smaller starter you make, the less growth you're going to have. The larger starter, you're going to get more growth.
Yeah, but I mean, with some yeasts, they don't mind being underpitched. Some of
Right.
them, you've got to really
And,
have
yeah,
a big, healthy
not-
pitch, or they start slow and
Not
they
even-
drop out quickly
yeah.
and that kind of thing. Where others are just more hardy yeasts. So, say if we're talking about brewers that maybe don't have a 5-liter flask or a 2-liter flask or something like that. They're doing a starter in a growler on their countertop or something like that.
So it sounds like you really need to know your yeast, right?
That's true.
Otherwise,
You really do.
You may have one that throws some off flavors or something if it's underpitched or overpitched or not.
And pick something that may do well through the shortcomings of the equipment that or space that you've got. If your temperature control is not great, something like American Ale 2 is not
What the hell are
one
we
I would
talking
recommend.
about? Shortcomings and 3-liter flasks and 5-liter flasks. Yeah. Anyway.
Are your headphones not turned on?
No, I guess not.
There's
Bueller,
a screen in front of you.
Bueller.
But like this is one that if I didn't have real good temperature control, if I couldn't get down into the mid or low 60s, I might stay away from this yeast a little bit because it would be a little too estery, maybe.
It's much better at that range.
Yeah.
Got some Free State Oktoberfest.
I love Free State beer.
Like me
This
some
is,
free
Lawrence.
tail too.
Lawrence
It's a lot
Kansas.
tastier than the last one.
They've their signature
cost
beer,
you
the one
nothing?
everybody knows them for up there, is called Ad Astra. It's like just a regular old American amber ale. Really solid beer. I love that every time I'm up in Kansas. They're out of Lawrence, right?
Right, Lawrence, Kansas.
Isn't there a school there, too?
Yes, there is. That's Kansas State, isn't it?
K-State, I believe.
Yeah. Is that? No, K-State's in Manhattan.
Okay, I
So
can
it's
never keep
Kansas.
it straight
It's
which one it
Kansas.
is. Yeah, okay. K-State is the Shockers, right? No, I'm serious. One of their schools up there, the mascot is the
No, that's
Shockers.
Kansas.
Is
Yeah,
it
but
Kansas?
it's not Kansas State.
But as in
They're
like
the Wild-
Shockers.
K-State Wildcats.
Kansas State's the Wildcats. Kansas is
Shockers,
the
Shockers?
Shockers.
No, they're
Jayhawks.
One of them up there
Jayhawks,
is
the
the
Jay-
Shockers. I shit you not.
Excuse me.
They have two mascots, Pinky and Stinky.
Yeah.
No, seriously, there is a school.
There
up
goes
there.
all of our Kansas listeners.
No, it's the truth. There's a school up there. That's their mascot.
Put Kansas on the
Well, I
list
mean,
with
it's
Arkansas.
better than the banana slugs.
It is better than banana slugs. Yes, I
And it's
agree.
much better than the banana hammocks. So
Debatable.
Hey, yeah, I was going to say, Chris will debate you on that one.
So let's move
Nothing
on to the
better
next
than banana
one.
making a hot day.
Let's not debate that in mass.
White Labs
okay?
002, WLP 002, the English ale, which is I'm not real familiar with the White Lab stuff. I used to use it years ago, but it's just not as readily available around here. And Stubby has really turned me into a Y yeast.
This is
Fan.
this is a Fuller's yeast.
It's the Fuller's ESP.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
so
this
1968.
should be
Yeah, just like the 1968. Yeah.
I've got it pulled up.
So it says this-
1968.
It was
yeah.
taken from a very popular independent brewery in England. Okay, so Fuller's. That's famous for their ESBs. This is best suited for English styles that require that unique English ester flavor profile. This can be used in such styles as ESBs, English pale ales, English IPAs, bitters, and English-style porters.
Yeah.
There are also some well-known brewers that use this yeast for their American IPA to give it a different spin.
I think that's Stone.
Is it
Yeah.
Stone?
Yeah, I think Stone uses 1968.
Yeah.
So it flocks out great and leaves the beer crystal clear, but does leave the beer with a slightly sweeter finish because the attenuation is a little bit lower.
That can't
And
be
it's
Stone.
also got
that
a little-
cannot be Stone.
little higher
No.
optimal temperature range.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about these English yeasts that you have to be careful. And I'd say that's for most of them is that if you do like to ferment in the lower ranges like I do and restrain the esters, some of that, you have to make sure that you watch your fermentation and you ramp it up and at least get it warm towards the end.
Well, now-
because you got to be careful that these yeasts don't flock out and drop
Didn't-
out on you before they're done.
I want to say that the Fermentus, and Stubby, you might remember this, the Fermentus poster that we got said that a lot of their 04 will produce more esters colder.
Oh, really? Well, that yeast
Some of them
is...
do. I don't know.
Some of them do. Some of the English yeasts will throw off more
Okay.
esters when they're colder, which is
Okay.
the exact opposite of what American
Oh, okay. I
American
didn't know
ales will throw off more esters warmer, and then
We may have
and
to
it's
look
not
that up.
it's not all, and we'll take a peek at this, but
It may not be more. It may be just different. Maybe
Right.
more of what we're going for there.
And I'd say that this is one that if you're brewing certain English styles, these yeasts are irreplaceable. They're to me, I'm familiar with the Y yeast, the 1968, the London ESB. And I think that's a truly
great yeast.
It's the exact same yeast.
It's the same yeast,
Yeah.
and I think it's a very unique yeast. You don't get the same ester flavor profile out of any other yeast, and it really does work well if you're brewing strong bitters or
Yeah,
quote
it
unquote
does.
ESBs.
The one thing I would say, though, however, you have to be extremely careful.
Careful.
I like it.
You got to be careful
Gotta be Care Bear.
because it can produce a lot of
Diacetyl, yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons to make sure you keep your temperature high towards the end of fermentation, keep the yeast active, not only so they finish fermenting, but that they clean up that diacetyl afterwards. Because these real highly flocculent yeasts will just clump up and drop out, even if they're not done. You got to be careful to keep them active and finish what they're doing.
And then you'll get a yeast infection.
That's right. You don't want your yeast infected. You got to be careful.
Careful.
Got to be careful.
Careful.
Very
Careful. Gotta be Care Bear.
This one, if you compare the ones, like I've used the dry English ale, which is pretty much in the same territory as this yeast, except for it's going to attenuate more, take away the sweet finish. This one leaves that sweet finish. But I can say for sure about the dry English, fantastic, especially for like stouts and
What do you mean by
imperial
dry
stouts.
English?
The next one, it's the same line more or less, but there's the dry English ale as well.
Fantastic.
I can't remember which number that is
Which one?
for the White Labs dry English ale.
Oh, I thought you were thinking dry.
No, it's
Oh,
the other
07.
one.
English
There's
ale.
English
okay.
ale and then there's dry English
There's
ale.
there's
okay.
a liquid yeast called
And
dry
if you-
English ale. And it's
Basically,
007.
their difference that they'll say is that the English ale will leave some sweetness to it and not attenuate as much, whereas the dry will completely dry it out. But it's like the
And
same flavor profile, more or less. So,
It's saying that 007 is the Whitbread
yeah,
yeast.
there you go.
Okay.
Because we've done that for the Russian Imperial Stout. That's
I was
Carl's
going to say
recipe.
that seems like it would be a really good use for very
It
high
is.
gravity.
It is.
Where you really want to make sure it doesn't end up with a real high finishing
flavor.
gravity. And
Good for
then
dark
also
beer.
with those high gravities, it's tough to use an estery yeast because they're working for so long. They'll produce so many esters that you have to be careful to restrain that in those higher gravity beers. I
heard
like
lots
this
of belching and
Oktoberfest,
stuff.
man.
This Oktoberfest is real good.
Yeah.
Which, that's one of the things that I found really interesting, when we were in Germany. Dude, they don't drink Oktoberfest. I mean, when you
Well,
go to
Märzen.
well, they don't even call them Märzen. I mean, when you go to Oktoberfest in Germany,
Right.
you drink Fest beer.
Right.
Well, yeah.
And to me,
Well, how do you know that?
Because it ain't amber like this.
Because Homeboy went to
Right.
Oktoberfest.
You've been there.
Yeah.
VIP.
Oh, okay.
But no, it's kind of like in between a Helles and a Pilsner.
It's kind.
It's
It's like an
different.
Imperial Helles, isn't it? It's like a 1%.
Yeah, it's
Higher.
a little higher, but
Yeah.
it has a little more hop character too.
Only
Well,
better.
it's a new category in the BJCP.
Yeah.
The
I judged that
2015.
no Zaft last year, or I tasted some. I shouldn't say I judged it. I tasted some of the entries, and they were really good. It seems to me like a beer you could really put down a lot of.
Well, I just so happen to have all of the Ozapt leftovers.
I was really hoping you said you had some Fest beer.
Well, there
Like-
might be some in there. I don't know.
No. I meant from
Germany?
yeah.
No.
You know what though?
Flat
I'll
that
take the Zaft leftovers. They're good. man.
Yeah.
That-
Well, and that's one of the things that's coolest. I think the coolest thing about being able to judge this, if you're not local and you have the opportunity to come in and judge this competition, I'm telling you, it's some of the best beers that I've ever judged.
yeah, I agree.
In any competition. And I think the reason being is because it's so lager centric that most of these people that are doing these beers are pretty advanced brewers.
A lot of people shy away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the guys that are willing to put themselves out there and brew these styles of beers,
They love these beers.
yeah, they love these beers
Yeah.
and they're willing to. It truly is a labor of love,
Exactly.
and I'm not kidding you. Every time I didn't. This is one of the first years we've been doing it for 5 or 6 years now, and I think this is the first year I've never judged the final round. And
Well, what happened?
I don't remember. I was doing something. But anyway,
Okay.
I can assure you, every single beer on the table I would purchase, and I can't say
Nice.
that. I can't say that for a lot of other competitions I've judged. So there you go.
Badass.
But anyway, what's next?
I thought somebody
Brandon
was
went to the bathroom.
somebody was going to go grab some
Zafel
some of these
K97.
Ozaf beers. I thought.
No. I don't know about that.
German fermentis.
Cephal K97.
Save.
K97.
K97.
Okay, so K97
Say
is
folly.
actually an English ale yeast, and I got to be honest with you, I've used this a few times, and it's one of those things. It's kind of like some of the yeasts that I do not like that I've used over the years, and then somebody will bring me in a sample, and I'm just like, "What yeast did you use? What?" I mean,
How did
And
you
that's what
manage that?
SO4 is for me.
and I'm just like blown away. I've never had good luck with this K97, but as a matter of fact, Sean from Cowtown Brewing just brought in a Dusseldorf alt beer.
So
and
good.
Man, it knocked my socks off. It was so amazing. It was great. It's fantastic. And the last one I brewed with K97, it just was terrible.
It was super estery. I remember that one.
It was terrible.
There's a weird balance to this yeast. I don't get it.
So, and his was clean, and it didn't have any off flavors. It was a beautiful beer, and I was just like, wow. And you did this with K97?
I've tasted beer that's great.
So do
with
you
this.
have any-
It's
do you
supposed
have
to be
any,
like the German ale, you know?
Do you
It's
have
supposed to be
any-
like a 1007
Yeah.
Y yeast. I don't. What is the White Labs equivalent? I can't
029.
remember. 029? Is that the
029.
Dusseldorf alt beer or something like that?
I will look it up.
Isn't it Dusseldorf?
You printed this
Dusseldorf?
off.
Yeah.
You printed this off
um,
before you got my
It's north
changes.
of Munich, right?
PJ
Oh, really?
Fru.
PJ Fru. Well, that's a Kolsch yeast, but PJ
Yeah.
Fru is Kolsch. But you can use. I mean, this is what's really funny about Cologne and Dusseldorf. I mean, they're literally 30 minutes apart. So it's like Dallas and Fort Worth.
Right.
You know, I mean, Midland, Odessa. I mean, it's
So if you
That
take a
close.
roadie, you can still have an alt beer by the time you get into
you bet.
Cologne. Nice.
I think they kind of frown upon that though.
Yes,
But
they
the-
do.
the-
I had a sales manager tell me one time, they take you straight to jail. They don't mess around with drunk driving over there.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works because
One-
they drink a lot of beer.
1007 is the Dusseldorf.
Yeah.
A lot of bicycles over there, I guess.
Zoom Erg.
Good trades.
Erdiga.
Erdig.
Yeah, that's the alt beer that I went to that brewery. Yeah. Erdiga.
Yeah, for this one, I mean, K97 is supposed to be the German ale. So you're looking at the 1007, the 029 for White Labs, or possibly even when you go to the Dusseldorf alt, which I can't remember that one. I had written these on here, but you printed this
Or-
off, I think, before. I
Yeah,
added those.
so you can use this yeast for a lot of different applications. I think, as a matter of fact, there's a big difference. We talked a lot and in detail about Dusseldorf alt beers last episode, I believe.
WLP
Someone
036.
just shard on a mic.
Sounded like it.
And so anyway, one of the things you can use this for is Kolsch beers. You can use this for alt beers, but also if you want something really clean without maybe doing a lager, it's still recommended to actually go through a lagering period. It just doesn't take quite as long to ferment. So you can
Well, isn't
use
that
this
one
for-
of the things you said, Kevin, said about this yeast is that it's the fastest fermenting yeast that Safel makes?
I don't
Because
remember,
the
maybe
first
being-
beer that you made with it, you said you pitched the yeast before the wort was down to temp, and he
Yeah.
said, "Well, that's your problem. It blew
That may
through
have
the
been-
fermentation before it got down to temperature."
That
'cause-
may have been
That
been
may
the
be
case.
before the
Yeah.
new Saison yeast came out.
Yeah, that stuff is
That's
stupid. But
amazing.
But I maybe that's the reason it was so estery is because it was. But, I typically with a lager, what I'll do is I'll wait till I actually get to the pitch or to my fermentation temperature before I pitch.
Well, yeah,
And
this
that may
was
be
one
the
for some
case.
reason you had to get out of here, and you thought, well, by the time this starts going, it'll be down. And he said, no, that thing got in there and fermented it before it ever got down to
Right.
temperature,
And
and
that
that's
may be
where
the
you got all
case.
those esters from. So,
Yeah, and I could say from back in the day, I used to go to a few different homebrew stores. 10 years ago, and they would repackage this yeast. And I never had good luck with it, and that may be some of the cases. It wasn't kept clean enough to where. And I think about that now, and I would never do that if
No.
some homebrew store was repackaging some yeast. I don't think I would ever
no.
buy that. But That was the first time I'd ever tried it, and I had no luck with it. I know this though; it's got a pretty persistent krausen. It's hard for. I mean, your beer will be almost fermented or completely fermented, and you'll still have a krausen on it. It doesn't want to go away. But you can use this for other things like amber ales. Would be a great use for this.
It's a good hybrid, you know.
Or if
which
you're
means
trying to,
for anything almost, you know.
if you're trying to do a pseudo type lager too, it'd be something you could use this for as well.
So the next one here is one of my favorite yeasts, actually, which is the Mangrove Jack M29 French Saison. And actually, between this and the new Fermentus that's out, I have a hard time because I have two favorite Saison yeasts now. This one is very, very similar to the Yeast 3711. I think have they said it's the same strain?
Pretty close, anyway.
I felt like it was even easier to work with.
Which is a French Saison yeast.
Really saying something, because the 3711 is very, very easy to work with. This stuff, man, it attenuated the beer really nice and dry. I thought really nice, even ester profile to it, real clean, but still had some of the Saison character to it. And I just thought it was just a great yeast. I really liked it a couple times I've used it.
Well, I think it brings across all the right ester profile that you want. And like you said, it dries it out. And it's going to be more of that pear apple.
Yeah,
probably more than,
right.
say, the dirty, earthy kind of quality
Yeah,
of the Belgian.
you're not going to get much of the peppery phenolics. In fact, I don't get any at all. I've had people say that they do get some of it. I don't get it at all. It's not like your Belgian Saison yeast. But you're right, the pear and the apple and just a really nice, clean, fruity Saison. It's a pretty classic Saison flavor.
And it works really well as far as if you're going to get in there. And this is one of those forgiving yeasts, I think.
Yes.
Definitely. I mean, just expect a very dry beer every time.
I've done
Unless
this
you've
one
built the
at
beer to
room
be
temperature
otherwise.
a couple times. Just and my wife likes to keep the house kind of warm, so it's 74, 75 degrees. You just pitch this stuff in on a 5-6% beer and let it go, and no problems at all. No hot alcohols or anything. It's just this yeast wants to be your friend and wants to play. And
unlike its cousins.
Right.
Well, and I got to tell you that one of the things that I think that's really awesome, I think you have really three great selections for dry Saison yeast.
Yes.
I like Bella Saison. I like the Mangrove Jack Saison, and I really like this new. I think all three of them are very good, and they all have different characteristics. So I think you have a really good toolbox when it comes to
you really do.
Saison
And they're
yeast.
really easy to work with. They're very attenuative. You can use them on high alcohol beers. The Belle Saison, that's like, man, that yeast is so aggressive. I've never seen anything ferment like that does. I personally don't like the ester profile on it as much as I like some of these French. The Belle is a little bit more of a hybrid almost.
So is it a temperature thing or just the yeast in general?
It's really not a temperature thing, actually. I've done that yeast in the low 60s before. I've used it for ciders and things like that, and I've done it at room temperature too. And it's pretty consistent in what you get out of it. I personally just like the flavor profile of like 3711 or this Mangrove Jack better. And now the new Fermentus one that's out too is really,
and I think
fantastic.
we've gotten to the stage now with the dry Saison yeast that you're doing pretty good to use any of those at this point, and you're going to have a quality beer out of it versus having to really work with the liquid yeast. And because I mean you get the right cell count when you're pitching in every time, and it's a little cheaper. You know, so.
And when you said Belle Saison, were you talking about the Belgian 565?
No, Belle Saison is the Lallemand.
Dan Star. Yeah,
Lallemand, Dan Star.
And that one, I've had that ferment a 1090 beer down to 0 in 7 days.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah, it will.
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
It's one that one is really one of those yeasts where up front you'll find a lot of flavor profile maybe that you're like, where'd this come from? I'm not sure about this. But if it's a big beer and you let it linger and sit for a while, that changes and it becomes more wine-like over time.
Yeah,
which,
you're right.
Like not a lot of saisons get to that stage, and it's a good stage to be at.
That's a really good point to make, and I think it does work a little bit better with some of the higher gravity
It
stuff.
does. Yeah. That's because I've used it on some really oversized saisons with like fruit additions and whatnot.
I'm convinced you could leave it in the package and throw the whole package in, and it would bust out and ferment your beer. That's how aggressive that yeast is.
And spit the
And eat
package
the
out.
Right,
Or
yeah,
eat
it's
it.
like the Hulk of
done with
saison
you.
yeast.
or just eat it, one or the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a
Nice.
Weird Al
You guys
Yankovic song?
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it is a Weird Al Yankovic song. Yes, that's a wonderful 30-year-old reference. I think Chris was being born sometime around this time.
Hey, I had a couple of those Weird Al records.
Yeah, he's made a comeback actually.
Yeah.
He's put out an album like every.
Have you seen
Since
him
the early
lately?
80s,
that
yeah.
dude has not
looks the
aged
same.
since
I know.
1983. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
How
because
that
he
happened.
sleeps
He's
in
the devil.
Tupperware.
God bless Dr. Demento.
wow. There's
There's
throwback.
another throwback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
Further
40-year-old reference.
Yeah.
That's even further. Yeah.
We used to record Dr. Demento off the radio onto cassette tapes.
Yeah.
and listen to it.
Listen to it. Yeah.
Man, you guys just
Wait,
need
you
to
used
stop.
to record onto what?
You
Wait,
just need to
what
get
is a
stopped.
cassette tape?
What are cassette?
Are those the big black things that you put into the TV?
That
Whoa.
sounds
Whoa,
racial.
hey,
That's
hey.
racial.
This is a family show, sir.
I don't see things that way.
So racial.
I really don't see color, you know.
Oh my god!
All right, so is this a
I'm
good place to
colorblind.
take a break?
I think so.
With the big black things.
We're gonna
Big
come
black
back.
things. We'll take a break.
We're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about some wit beers. We actually have true classic examples that are actually referenced in the BJCP.
I am really looking forward to this.
Weird.
Yes.
After
so-
our sensitivity training.
All right. So here's the many-colored death. Enjoy them while they melt your face during the break.
Balls.
Hold on, I ain't done yet.
This burl